The Fort Bragg motor pool simmered under a merciless July sun, the asphalt radiating heat in waves that shimmered across rows of dusty military trucks. Soldiers lounged lazily against vehicles, wiping sweat with stained sleeves, while the hum of engines and clanging of tools filled the air. Into this chaos rolled a gray sedan, kicking up a cloud of dust as it slowed near the gate. Soldiers barely noticed at first, just another transfer. She stepped out, compact and unassuming, her uniform neat but plain. Emma Calder was her name. No rank insignia gleamed on her chest, no ribbons, no flashy medals, nothing to mark her as someone important. Colonel Barrett, a tall, commanding presence with decades of strict authority etched into his face, glanced her way. He smirked, his eyes narrowing as if he were looking at a stray animal. "Motor pool over there, sweetheart," he barked dismissively, waving a hand toward the far corner. "Don't get in the way." Emma simply nodded. She didn't argue, didn't flinch, but there was something in her calm eyes that made SGT. Mason Grant, a grizzled mechanic with years of experience, pause. He had seen a lot of new recruits. None had the subtle confidence this quiet woman carried. As she walked past the rows of Humvees and maintenance bays, whispers began to stir. Soldiers exchanged curious glances. Who is she? Why here? No one knew. Emma's first stop wasn't the office, wasn't the barracks. It was a small, locked room at the far end of the motor pool, a room no one had used in years. She retrieved a key from a discreet pocket, inserted it into the ancient lock, and swung the door open. Inside, dust motes danced in shafts of sunlight, and at the far end of the room stood a safe, sealed and imposing. She ran her hand along the cold metal, the faint click echoing in the silence. Then, with a careful combination, she opened it, revealing a stack of binders neatly arranged, but undeniably significant. Emma's fingers hovered over the top one, her expression tightening ever so slightly. Something inside confirmed what she had suspected. There were secrets here, buried beneath years of neglect, and she had just found the first thread. Outside, Barrett's booming voice drifted across the yard, mocking and dismissive. "Everyone, eyes forward. Let's see if our new assistant can handle a wrench without breaking it." Soldiers chuckled, glancing at Emma. She ignored him. By the end of the day, even the sun seemed to dip with a sense of unease, as if the world itself sensed the tension that had arrived with her. Emma lingered in the small office, flipping through the first pages of the binder. Each document hinted at mismanagement, inconsistencies, and troubling discrepancies. Barrett's careless arrogance had allowed problems to fester unchecked, and now someone had arrived to notice them, someone nobody suspected. SGT. Grant lingered outside the office door, curious but wary. Something told him the quiet newcomer was more than just a transfer, more than a nobody. And as Emma carefully closed the binder, slipping it back into the safe, she paused, her eyes distant, almost unreadable. A plan was forming, one that would shake the entire motor pool to its core. The day ended with the faint sound of distant engines winding down. Soldiers left, the yard emptied, but Emma remained. She knew the motor pool's daily grind hid far more than dirty vehicles and loud radios. It hid corruption, secrets, and danger, and she would uncover it all. As she locked the safe, a subtle tension gripped the air. Something had begun, and the motor pool would never be the same. The final thought lingered in Emma's mind. Someone powerful would notice soon, and they would not be pleased. The next morning, the Fort Bragg motor pool awakened under a heat that already pressed against the shoulders of soldiers like a physical weight. Engines rumbled as mechanics began their daily inspections, grease streaking their faces and uniforms. The air smelled of diesel, hot metal, and a hint of tension that had quietly grown overnight. The soldiers spoke in low murmurs about the new arrival, the quiet woman who had appeared out of nowhere and lingered in the shadows of the motor pool. Emma Calder moved among the rows of Humvees and trucks with a calm purpose. She carried a clipboard, her movements deliberate and measured, as if every glance, every inspection, every note taken was part of a larger plan. No one could tell her intentions yet, but something about her presence unsettled the crew. Colonel Barrett arrived with his usual booming presence, stomping across the lot in polished boots, eyes scanning the soldiers like a hawk. He stopped abruptly when he saw Emma, tilting his head as if appraising a mislaid object. "And what exactly are you doing here?" Barrett barked, loud enough for the nearby mechanics to flinch. "This isn't a playground. You don't belong in my motor pool." Emma looked up, calm and unshaken. "I'm conducting an operational evaluation of the vehicles and records," she said plainly. Her voice carried authority, though it was measured, not loud, not aggressive. Barrett snorted, a derisive sound. He tore a file from her hands and waved it like a flag. "Operational evaluation. Ha, whoever processed your paperwork must have lost their mind. We don't need untrained help wasting time here. Step aside." The soldiers around them laughed quietly, thinking it was just another display of Barrett's ego. But SGT. Mason Grant, leaning against a tool cart with grease-stained arms, noticed something different. Emma didn't flinch, didn't argue. She didn't even show annoyance. Her calmness radiated a strange confidence, the kind only earned through experience or a deep knowledge no one else yet had. She retrieved another folder from her bag, sliding it across to Barrett. "Sir, these are operational discrepancies I noticed. Some are urgent." Barrett waved his hand dismissively. "I don't have time for your paperwork, sweetie. Get back to the corner and stay out of trouble." Emma's eyes flickered briefly with something unreadable. Not anger, not fear. Something else, patience and focus, like a coiled spring ready to release. She turned and walked away, leaving Barrett to his irritation. SGT. Grant, compelled by curiosity, followed her discreetly. He wanted to understand why Barrett's usual tactics didn't seem to affect her. Emma stopped in front of a long-abandoned office at the far end of the motor pool. The door had long been locked, its paint peeling, but she produced a key from a hidden pocket, unlocked it, and stepped inside. The office smelled of dust and neglect, the kind of room forgotten by time. In the center stood a metal safe, imposing and untouched for years. Emma approached it with reverence, her fingers brushing over the cold steel before she carefully dialed the combination. The lock clicked open, echoing in the small space. Inside, neatly stacked binders glimmered slightly under the dim light. Emma carefully pulled out the top one, flipping through pages with precision. Each sheet told a story of oversight, mismanagement, and discrepancies in vehicle maintenance records. Some logs were falsified. Some records showed fuel discrepancies. Others indicated unauthorized movements of vehicles, trips unaccounted for, gone unreported. Her expression hardened as she skimmed through the files. Barrett's signature appeared in multiple places. He had been signing off on maintenance reports he didn't even know existed, letting lapses and irregularities go unchecked. But there were worse anomalies, modifications to vehicles that were off-record, potentially dangerous, and linked to operations that should have required higher authorization. SGT. Grant peeked inside, eyes wide. "Ma'am, this is bad, really bad. Are you here to shut the motor pool down?" Emma didn't look up. "I'm here to protect soldiers. Some of them might already be in danger if these vehicles go out." Grant felt a chill run down his spine. He had served in the motor pool for years, but he had never seen anyone with such composure under scrutiny, nor with this level of awareness. Later that afternoon, as Emma continued her silent inspection, an unexpected visitor arrived, the base commander himself. He moved through the motor pool, eyes scanning the lot and its occupants. Several soldiers whispered among themselves, assuming the commander had come to see Barrett's performance. But he kept glancing at Emma, his gaze lingering longer than necessary. That evening, as sunlight turned the asphalt to molten bronze, Emma returned to the office. She opened the safe once more, examining a particular binder marked with a symbol that had not been seen in the motor pool for 15 years. A symbol that, to those in the know, indicated classified operations involving sensitive logistics. Her fingers traced the edges of the pages, and she paused. The records revealed alarming evidence: forged maintenance reports, unauthorized trips, and falsified signatures, all pointing toward a larger conspiracy. Barrett's arrogance had left traces of wrongdoing everywhere, and Emma was beginning to piece together a map of it. Outside, shadows lengthened as soldiers departed for the day. Barrett's voice echoed faintly through the lot, barking orders as if trying to assert control, but no one seemed to take notice. The air carried an unspoken tension, an awareness that something had shifted in the motor pool. SGT. Grant lingered at the doorway, torn between fear and awe. He realized this woman, whom the colonel had dismissed as a nobody, was quietly gathering the threads that would unravel years of corruption and negligence. Emma closed the binder and replaced it in the safe. She paused for a moment, taking a deep breath, her eyes fixed on the horizon. She knew someone powerful would notice her presence soon, someone who would not welcome her discoveries. But for now, the tension hung like a storm cloud over the motor pool, promising turbulence. As the last rays of the sun fell, Emma locked the safe and turned to leave the office. SGT. Grant followed silently, sensing that this was only the beginning. In the quiet, she muttered to herself, barely audible, "They'll see me soon enough, and then nothing will ever be the same." The day ended with an uneasy stillness, the kind that precedes a storm. Emma's presence had shifted the balance, and the motor pool, long complacent under Barrett's authority, would soon face the consequences of their oversight. Outside, unnoticed, someone was watching, and they would not be pleased. The following morning dawned like a furnace over Fort Bragg. The motor pool shimmered under the heat, and the smell of diesel and hot metal filled the air, hanging like an invisible fog over the rows of trucks and Humvees. Soldiers arrived sluggishly, wiping sweat from their foreheads and muttering about the oppressive sun. Yet something about this day felt different, though no one could articulate it. The new transfer, Emma called her, moved among them with a purpose that made even the most hardened mechanics pause. She carried her clipboard, pen poised, making meticulous notes on vehicles, oil levels, tire conditions, and maintenance logs. Every glance, every inspection, every careful tap of her pen seemed deliberate, like a chess player positioning pieces before the game began. Soldiers muttered behind her back, dismissive of her efforts. Barrett, predictably, took immediate offense. "What's this?" he barked, striding across the lot, hands on his hips. "This isn't an elementary school project. Who gave you permission to meddle with my motor pool?" Emma didn't flinch. She kept her eyes on a Humvee she had circled in her notes. "I'm conducting a full audit of the fleet," she said calmly. "Some vehicles may be unsafe for deployment." Barrett's laugh boomed. "Unsafe, huh? That's rich. You're wasting everyone's time. Sit down before I make you leave." She didn't move. Soldiers exchanged uncertain glances. Some smirked, thinking she was naive. Others felt an unspoken tension rippling through the lot. SGT. Mason Grant, standing to the side, watched closely, realizing that Emma wasn't here to play by the usual rules. Something about her composure told him she had a purpose Barrett couldn't understand. As she moved along the line, Emma noticed things no one else seemed to see. One Humvee had a GPS tracker removed and replaced. A fuel log showed unexplained variances over the past 2 weeks. A heavy truck had tampered wiring near its engine bay. These were subtle anomalies, invisible to casual inspection but glaring to someone trained to spot irregularities. She made notes carefully, connecting the dots silently on her clipboard. Later, she pulled Grant aside, speaking quietly so Barrett couldn't hear. "Some of these vehicles are scheduled for deployment. If they leave the motor pool like this, someone could get hurt." Grant, ever practical, frowned. "Ma'am, or whatever your rank is, are you really here to protect the soldiers? Or are you here to shut the motor pool down?" Emma didn't answer immediately. Her eyes flickered toward a truck with unusual wiring she had circled earlier. "I'm here to make sure people aren't in danger. Some of the issues I'm seeing go beyond negligence." They're deliberate. Grant's eyes widened. Deliberate. Emma nodded. Yes, someone been manipulating maintenance logs and vehicle readiness reports, and I believe someone on this base knows about it. That afternoon, as she continued her quiet audit, the base commander arrived unexpectedly. Soldiers assumed he was inspecting Barrett's leadership, but he spent more time watching Emma than anyone else. Barrett noticed the commander's interest and stiffened, glaring at Emma as though she were a threat. Emma, however, ignored both the colonel and the commander, her focus entirely on the vehicles. She found a truck with subtle but significant damage, a cracked hydraulic line, a tampered ignition system, and a missing service tag. It was clear someone had intentionally covered up maintenance to allow unsafe vehicles to leave the motor pool. That evening, Emma returned to her small office at the far end of the lot. The dusty air smelled of old paper and rust, the faint hum of a ceiling fan doing little to alleviate the heat. She unlocked the safe and retrieved a binder marked with a faded military symbol she recognized immediately, a symbol associated with sensitive internal investigations and classified logistics operations. Flipping through the pages, Emma's jaw tightened. The documents revealed a tangled web of falsified reports, unauthorized vehicle movements, and tampered GPS trackers. Barrett's signature appeared repeatedly, though in many cases he had likely never reviewed the documents. Someone higher up, however, had manipulated the system to cover their tracks, making the situation even more dangerous. Grant, who had lingered outside her office, finally stepped in, his voice barely above a whisper. "Ma'am, this is bigger than I thought. How did you know what to look for?" Emma didn't answer directly. Instead, she tapped a sheet showing vehicle routes. "The patterns were obvious if you knew what to look for, but I needed access to confirm it. And now I have evidence that some vehicles were used for off-base operations without authorization, operations that could put soldiers' lives at risk." Grant felt a chill. He had spent years in the motor pool, and he knew how dangerous it could be when equipment was mismanaged. But this was something else entirely, a deliberate manipulation of logistics and vehicles that endangered lives. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, shadows stretching across the lot, Emma closed the binder and replaced it carefully in the safe. She paused for a moment, eyes scanning the emptying lot through the dusty window. Soldiers were leaving, oblivious to the danger that had been quietly unfolding under their noses for months, possibly years. Suddenly, an encrypted call came through a secure line she had set up in her office. She answered quickly, voice low. "Calder." A distorted voice responded, urgent but calm. "Your findings match the threat indicators. Continue quietly, and be prepared this will escalate quickly." Emma's heart skipped a beat, but her face remained calm. She ended the call and turned back to the window. Her mind raced. The anomalies she had found were part of a much larger pattern, one that implicated more than Barrett alone. Someone higher up was involved, and now they knew she was uncovering it. Before she could react further, headlights flashed outside the office window. Someone was observing her. Her pulse quickened. This was no longer a routine audit. Someone was watching her, tracking her every move. She moved quietly to the door, peering through the blinds. A figure lingered in the shadows near the gate, unmoving. Barrett's voice carried from the lot, booming across the asphalt. "The audit ends now. Everyone back to work." Emma knew it wasn't just Barrett who would try to stop her. The moment she had begun uncovering the truth, she had become a threat to someone with far more power than the colonel. And that meant she had to proceed carefully but decisively. She turned back to Grant, who had been watching her quietly. "We need to document everything. Every vehicle, every anomaly, every signature. Someone been using this motor pool for purposes it wasn't meant for, and if we don't stop it, someone will get hurt." Grant nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. For the first time, he saw Emma not as a new transfer or a quiet stranger, but as someone who commanded authority in a way that no one else in the motor pool could. The shadows outside deepened as the evening air cooled, and Emma knew the real challenge was only beginning. Someone powerful had noticed her presence, someone dangerous, and when they made their move, the entire motor pool would be caught in the middle of a storm they could never have anticipated. The last thought that crossed Emma's mind as she closed the office door for the night: someone has been watching all along, and they're not going to let me leave this quiet. The sun had barely risen over Fort Bragg when the motor pool roared to life again. Engines growled, tires squeaked against asphalt, and the familiar rhythm of morning maintenance filled the air. But this morning, tension hung heavier than the heat. Soldiers moved with unusual alertness, eyes darting toward Emma Calder, the quiet officer whose calm presence had already begun to unsettle Colonel Barrett. Barrett arrived with his usual swagger, boots clicking against the concrete. He spotted Emma inspecting a fleet of Humvees, her pen gliding over the clipboard with deliberate attention. His lips curled into a mocking smile. "Ah, our new star pupil," he barked, voice carrying across the lot. "Still pretending you know how to run a motor pool. Let's see what you've discovered today, miss. What is it again?" "Calder." Emma looked up slowly, her expression neutral. "Calder, sir. I'm reviewing vehicles for safety and operational readiness. Some may require immediate attention." Barrett's laughter boomed, sharp and cutting. "Safety, readiness. You think a newbie like you can determine what's dangerous and what is? I've been in this motor pool for decades. Do you really think I'd allow unsafe vehicles to operate?" Emma didn't flinch. Her voice remained calm, even measured. "Colonel Barrett, I'm not questioning your experience. I'm providing data, facts, not opinions. And the facts indicate discrepancies that could put soldiers at risk." Barrett's face darkened. The dismissal that had been his shield against others, criticism, now seemed fragile. "You're stepping out of line, Miss Calder. I can have you removed immediately. Out of my motor pool. Do you understand?" Emma remained seated at her inspection station, hands folded, calm as if she had expected this confrontation. "Try it." The word struck the motor pool like a sudden shockwave. Soldiers glanced at one another, some smirking nervously, unsure if she had truly meant it. But SGT. Mason Grant's eyes widened. He had served under Barrett for years and knew that no one dared speak that way to him and live. Barrett's jaw tightened. "You dare talk back to me? Everyone see this. This is how disrespectful people act when they think they're above authority." Emma rose slowly, maintaining eye contact with the colonel. "I am not above authority, sir. I am tasked with ensuring your soldiers operate safely. If that threatens you, perhaps the issue lies not with me but with the system you oversee." Barrett's face turned crimson. His hands curled into fists, the veins in his neck visible under the hot morning sun. He spun on his heel, bellowing orders to the motor pool. "That's it. No one is to follow her inspection. The audit ends now. Back to your stations." The soldiers hesitated. Some exchanged uncertain glances. Others, smirking, pretended to comply. SGT. Grant, however, remained close to Emma, recognizing that she was not simply a civilian or a clerk, she was something else entirely. Emma returned to her clipboard, ignoring Barrett's fury. She examined the trucks, Humvees, and Jeeps with a practiced eye, noting subtle irregularities that only someone with training or inside knowledge could detect. One truck had a hidden transmitter embedded under the chassis. Another vehicle's fuel logs had been tampered with. A third vehicle showed signs of sabotage meant to go unnoticed by casual inspection. Grant stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Ma'am, you're seeing things no one else even notices. Barrett will lose it when he finds out." Emma didn't respond immediately. Her eyes scanned a Humvee, noticing the slight misalignment of the GPS unit and a small, carefully hidden scratch near the engine panel. She scribbled notes silently. "These discrepancies aren't accidents. They're deliberate." Grant swallowed hard. "Deliberate." Yes, Emma replied, her tone calm, almost cold. Someone has been manipulating this motor pool for months, possibly years. They've covered their tracks carefully, but mistakes have been made. I intend to find them. Barrett, still fuming, stalked closer. And what if I say you're overstepping? What if I call MPs and have you escorted out? Emma's eyes met his directly. Then it will be recorded, and everyone will know the truth about why I was removed and what you were hiding. Barrett's mouth opened, then closed. He seemed momentarily unsure. Emma's unwavering composure, the quiet authority in her voice, unnerved him. For the first time, Barrett's confidence faltered. As the tension mounted, a mechanic ran up, sweating and breathless. "Colonel Barrett, you need to see this. The new truck on the east lot, the wiring. Someone tampered with it. It's unsafe to operate." Barrett's face twisted. "Who did this, when?" Emma's voice cut through sharply. "The tampering is recent, and yes, Colonel, that vehicle is unsafe. You were informed." Barrett's eyes flicked to the soldiers, then to Emma, who met his gaze unwaveringly. No hesitation, no apology, just facts. Grant, now fully on her side, pulled Emma slightly aside. "Ma'am, the GPS logs, the fuel discrepancies, the tampering, it's worse than I thought. If Barrett really is involved, someone could get hurt out there." Emma nodded. "Exactly. That's why we move carefully. We document, verify, and wait for the right moment. Patience is our only advantage against arrogance." Later that afternoon, Emma returned to her office. The dusty, forgotten room at the far end of the motor pool smelled of mildew and old paper. She unlocked the safe and retrieved a binder marked with the faded symbol of sensitive operations. Flipping through the pages, Emma discovered deeper discrepancies. Off-base trips, falsified service logs, and even documents suggesting someone had manipulated vehicle availability for purposes she had yet to fully uncover. Barrett's signature appeared repeatedly, but the subtle alterations suggested someone else had been orchestrating events behind the scenes. Grant peered over her shoulder. This isn't just negligence. Someone been deliberately hiding something, but who?" Emma's gaze darkened. "Someone with access, knowledge, and power. Someone who doesn't want these operations exposed, and they're watching." Her words were barely out when the office door creaked. She turned sharply. The shadows in the room shifted. Someone had been observing her movements. Her pulse quickened, but her composure remained intact. Barrett's booming voice suddenly echoed from the lot. "Emma Calder, end your audit now. Everyone ignore her." Emma took a deep breath, then calmly replied, "The audit continues. Soldiers' safety isn't optional." SGT. Grant stood beside her, witnessing something extraordinary. Barrett, the colonel who had commanded the motor pool for decades, had no immediate reply. His usual fire and authority seemed to falter in the presence of Emma's quiet power. That evening, the shadows outside grew longer, darkness creeping over the lot. Emma closed the safe, knowing that Barrett's fury was only the beginning. Someone higher, someone with more influence and a vested interest in hiding the truth, was now aware of her actions. She turned to Grant, voice low and resolute. "We continue. Every vehicle, every log, every signature. If we don't document this, soldiers will pay the price." Grant nodded, understanding the gravity of their task. He realized fully now, Emma Calder was no ordinary officer, and the battle ahead would not just test their skills, it would test their courage, their loyalty, and their ability to stand against corruption that ran far deeper than anyone in the motor pool had imagined. Outside, the last rays of sun faded. Somewhere in the distance, headlights flickered. Emma paused. Someone was watching, and this time it was no longer just Barrett. The quiet audit had begun, and Fort Bragg's motor pool would never be the same. The morning sun had barely pierced the horizon when the Fort Bragg motor pool came alive with the usual symphony of engines, clanking metal, and soldiers shouted orders. But today, the atmosphere was taut with an undercurrent of unease. Emma Calder moved among the vehicles with deliberate precision, clipboard in hand, noting each anomaly, each irregularity, each silent threat lurking within the fleet. Colonel Barrett strode across the lot, his boots echoing on the concrete, his face a mask of forced authority. "Everyone focus. And you," he barked at Emma, "step away from that vehicle. You're not qualified to make judgment calls here." Emma looked up calmly, her eyes meeting Barrett's with unyielding focus. "Colonel, I am not here to question your authority. I am here to ensure no soldier leaves this motor pool in a vehicle that could fail them." The words, calm and measured, sent a ripple of tension through the gathered soldiers. Barrett's usual smirk faltered, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. The men and women around them whispered nervously. Something about Emma's demeanor made even the colonel hesitate. SGT. Mason Grant, observing from a safe distance, felt his chest tighten. Over the past few days, he had witnessed Emma methodically uncovering errors, inconsistencies, and deliberate tampering. Now, standing before her in the open lot, he realized she was no ordinary officer. She carried an authority that was not granted by rank alone. It was commanded by presence, precision, and an unwavering dedication to truth. Emma approached a Humvee near the back of the lot, noting subtle signs of tampering. The GPS tracker had been removed and reinstalled incorrectly. Fuel logs were altered to hide unauthorized trips. The engine panel bore faint but deliberate scratches suggesting someone had attempted to manipulate the ignition system. She knelt, running her gloved hand over the area, eyes narrowing. Grant approached cautiously. "Ma'am, that's bad, really bad. If someone drives that vehicle out of here, someone could get hurt." Emma's jaw tightened. "Exactly, and that's why this must be documented. Every discrepancy, every irregularity, every falsified log. We need the evidence before anyone else gets hurt." Suddenly, security personnel appeared, rushing toward them. "Ma'am, Colonel Barrett requested we intervene. He says you are interfering with authorized operations." Emma lifted her badge deliberately, revealing the insignia underneath, a badge of authority that instantly silenced the approaching MPs. Their expressions shifted from suspicion to shock, then to hesitant respect. The room froze. Even Barrett, standing a few meters away, faltered in disbelief. "Document everything," Emma instructed, her voice calm but commanding. "Sweep the entire fleet. I want every vehicle inspected, every log verified. No exceptions." The soldiers, mechanics, and MPs moved quickly under her direction. The quiet efficiency was mesmerizing. Grant, still standing nearby, could hardly believe what he was witnessing. The woman dismissed as a nobody had suddenly become the undisputed authority over the entire motor pool. As the inspections progressed, a mechanic shouted from across the lot, "Ma'am, found something." Emma moved quickly, arriving at the vehicle with Grant close behind. Underneath the chassis, they discovered a hidden transmitter, military grade, embedded with precision and completely unauthorized. Emma's eyes flicked to the GPS logs she had previously noted. Someone had been using the vehicles for clandestine trips off base, trips that should never have occurred. Barrett's face turned red. "Who authorized this? This is impossible. No one would." Emma interrupted, her voice unwavering. "The logs are clear, Colonel. These actions were deliberate. You may not have authorized them, but someone has." The soldiers froze, watching the confrontation unfold. Barrett's usual dominance was eroding before their eyes. Emma calmly continued to inspect the transmitter, documenting every detail. "This device has been operational for weeks. Someone used it to track movements, hide trips, and possibly coordinate unauthorized operations." Grant's jaw dropped. "Ma'am, this isn't just Barrett. Someone else must be behind this. Someone with access, someone powerful." Emma nodded slowly. "Yes, and the implications are grave. Every soldier who trusted these vehicles has been at risk. The motor pool has been compromised, and it's our responsibility to uncover who is responsible." The soldiers whispered among themselves. The atmosphere was thick with tension and awe. Barrett, pale and flustered, tried to regain control, but Emma's calm authority overrode him completely. She turned to him, her eyes piercing. "Colonel Barrett, you are relieved of oversight over these operations effective immediately," she said, her tone cold and deliberate. "This investigation is now under my command." Barrett's mouth opened, then closed. For the first time in decades, he was silenced, unable to respond to the calm authority of a woman he had dismissed as a nobody. As Emma prepared to continue the sweep, a mechanic ran up, breathless. "Ma'am, the transmitter leads us to coordinates outside the base, and they found something there. Remains, possibly human." Emma's breath caught. Her fingers trembled slightly for the first time, but her composure remained. She recognized the significance immediately. Every discovery over the past days, every discrepancy she had uncovered had led to this. The stakes were now personal. Grant, sensing the weight of the moment, whispered, "Ma'am, those coordinates, could it be?" Emma's eyes narrowed. "Yes, it's him." Her brother, Specialist David Calder, had been declared missing months earlier during a logistics operation linked to the motor pool. The Army had ruled it an accident. Emma had never believed it. Now, the evidence suggested otherwise. Barrett's eyes widened. He hadn't expected personal stakes to emerge, nor had he expected his authority to crumble under the presence of someone who commanded respect with quiet determination. Emma turned to the soldiers, her voice steady, though her mind raced. "This is why we document. This is why every detail matters. Someone has been using these vehicles for purposes no soldier should endure, and it's only just coming to light." Grant stepped beside her, watching as she meticulously reviewed every log, every transmitter reading, every subtle anomaly she had uncovered. The soldiers of the motor pool stood silent, in awe of her methodical authority. Outside, the sun dipped lower, shadows stretching across the lot, casting long, ominous shapes. Emma closed the final binder, replacing it carefully in the safe. Her hands lingered on the metal door for a moment, a silent acknowledgement of the stakes at hand. Someone higher than Barrett had orchestrated these operations. Someone with knowledge, access, and a willingness to risk soldiers' lives. And now, Emma knew that uncovering the truth would put them directly in the line of fire. As she turned to leave, her eyes met Grant. "We continue. This is far from over. My brother's life, our soldiers' safety, and the integrity of this base depend on it. Nothing stops this investigation now." The soldiers of the motor pool stood silently, realizing for the first time that the nobody who had arrived quietly among them was no ordinary officer. She was the highest authority, the one who could command respect, enforce accountability, and unearth truths that had remained hidden for far too long. And somewhere, beyond the perimeter of the base, someone was watching. Someone who had orchestrated these events and now knew that Emma Calder was onto them. The quiet authority that had dismantled Barrett's arrogance had now drawn the attention of a far greater threat, one that would soon test Emma in ways the motor pool could never anticipate. The stage was set. The investigation had escalated, and the motor pool, long complacent under Barrett's oversight, would never be the same. The motor pool was eerily quiet the next morning. The usual hum of diesel engines and clanging tools seemed muted, as though the base itself had absorbed the tension that Emma Calder's presence had stirred. Soldiers moved with unusual caution, their eyes flicking toward her with a mix of awe, curiosity, and fear. Even Colonel Barrett, who had once commanded this lot with unchallenged authority, now hesitated, his confidence shaken by the calm, precise power of a woman he had dismissed as a nobody. Emma had spent the previous night meticulously reviewing records, cross-referencing vehicle logs with off-base travel reports and satellite data. Each irregularity told a story of deliberate manipulation, falsification, and danger hidden in plain sight. Yet amidst the procedural discrepancies lay a more personal truth. Her brother, Specialist David Calder, missing months earlier during a logistics run, was now at the center of the unfolding mystery. SGT, Mason Grant approached her cautiously, still grappling with the revelations of the past days. "Ma'am, all this evidence, it's worse than I imagined. If Barrett's involved, that's one thing, but someone else must have orchestrated the off-base operations. Someone higher up." Emma nodded slowly, her eyes scanning the motor pool. "Yes, Barrett has been careless and complicit, but he is not the root of this. My brother, his disappearance, it ties directly to someone with greater authority and reach than Barrett ever imagined. Someone who has been using this motor pool as a cover." Grant's face paled. "You mean someone at the top levels of command?" Emma's jaw tightened. "Exactly, and that's why I had to transfer here under a covert assignment. My official rank is far higher than anyone suspects, but revealing it prematurely could compromise the investigation." Grant blinked, incredulous. "You're saying you're not just a transfer officer?" Emma's calm gaze met his. "I am a full-bird colonel, assigned specifically to investigate internal corruption and security threats within military logistics. Only a dozen officers nationwide hold the clearance and authority to do what I am doing here. Barrett has no idea who he is dealing with, and the soldiers do not yet understand what is happening." The revelation stunned Grant. He had served at Fort Bragg for years, navigating the rigid hierarchies of the military, yet he had never encountered someone who wielded quiet authority with such precision. He realized that Emma's calm demeanor and meticulous approach were the product of both training and personal stakes that included her missing brother. Emma returned to the fleet, inspecting vehicles one by one. She noted subtle irregularities, altered ignition systems, hidden transmitters, and falsified fuel logs. Each discovery reinforced the urgency of the situation. Soldiers who had laughed at her initially now followed her instructions without question, their previous skepticism replaced by a grudging respect. As they worked, she briefed Grant quietly, pulling him aside behind a row of trucks. "The GPS logs, the transmitter signals, and the fuel discrepancies all converge on a location outside the base. It's where my brother's last known movements were traced. If our suspicions are correct, that location will reveal the truth about what happened to him." Grant swallowed hard. "And Barrett?" Emma's eyes darkened. "He is complicit in negligence, but not in the orchestrated disappearance. Someone else is pulling strings behind the scenes. We need to tread carefully. Any misstep could endanger my brother and the soldiers." Suddenly, the motor pool doors swung open. Barrett stormed in, his face a mask of fury. "Calder, step away from those vehicles. I have ordered an end to your audit. You are overstepping your authority." Emma didn't flinch. She calmly set down her clipboard and faced him. "Colonel Barrett, I am not overstepping. I am executing a federally sanctioned investigation. Your interference is obstruction. Cease immediately, or it will be documented." Barrett's face turned red. "You dare speak to me this way? I outrank you in this motor pool. I've commanded here for decades." Emma's voice remained steady, each word deliberate. "Colonel, your command here is procedural, not absolute. Your negligence and falsifications have endangered soldiers. I am here to ensure accountability and safety, starting with your oversight. That is my authority. Do not test it." Barrett hesitated. For the first time in decades, he found himself without the tools to command fear. Soldiers who had once obeyed his every word now looked to Emma. SGT. Grant stepped closer, standing silently at her side, an unspoken ally. Later that evening, Emma returned to the small office at the far end of the motor pool. Dust motes swirled in the fading sunlight as she unlocked the safe and retrieved the classified binder. She spread out satellite logs, GPS coordinates, and fuel discrepancies across the desk. Each sheet told a story that culminated in one location outside the base. Grant leaned over her shoulder. "That's where the signal originates." Emma nodded, tracing the coordinates with a gloved finger. Yes, if we are correct, that location will reveal the truth about my brother's disappearance and possibly expose the network behind these unauthorized operations. Her hands trembled slightly as she closed the binder, but only for a moment. The stakes were no longer procedural. They were personal. She could feel the weight of every soldier's life, every falsified log, every tampered vehicle pressing down on her shoulders. Failure was not an option. As they prepared to leave the office, headlights appeared outside the window. Someone was observing. Emma's pulse quickened, but her face remained calm. "They know," she whispered to Grant. "Our movements are being tracked." Grant's eyes widened. "Ma'am, what do we do?" Emma's expression hardened. "We continue, carefully, and we confront this network before anyone else is harmed. But Barrett is no longer our only concern. Someone higher up, someone powerful, is aware of our investigation, and they will try to stop us." Barrett's shadow fell across the office doorway. He had overheard part of their conversation, his face twisted with anger and confusion. "You cannot do this," he shouted. "I will not allow it." Emma met his gaze calmly. "Colonel, your obstruction has already been noted. Step aside. If you interfere further, it will be documented as evidence. The investigation does not end here. It begins now." SGT. Grant could hardly believe what he was witnessing. Barrett, who had once dominated the motor pool with fear and authority, was now powerless against Emma's quiet, unwavering control. Soldiers watched from the lot, their whispers a mix of awe and disbelief. That night, as Emma and Grant prepared to follow the GPS coordinates off base, she paused and took a deep breath. Her brother's life, the safety of the soldiers, and the integrity of the motor pool depended on what they were about to do. And yet, she felt a strange calm, the calm of someone who had trained for this moment her entire career, and had personal stakes that transcended rank, authority, or protocol. As they stepped out into the darkness, a distant figure observed them from the shadows. Someone higher up, more powerful than Barrett, had taken notice, and they were calculating their next move. Emma glanced at Grant. "Whatever happens next, we cannot fail." Grant nodded. "Understood, ma'am, whatever it takes." The motor pool lay behind them, silent now, its secrets still hidden but slowly being unearthed. The investigation had escalated beyond simple audit and authority. The game had changed, stakes were personal, and the confrontation with corruption at the highest level was imminent. The hidden past had been revealed, the threat was real, and the countdown to confrontation had begun. The motor pool was unusually silent as the sun rose over Fort Bragg, the heat already pressing against the asphalt. Soldiers moved with a mixture of curiosity and tension, whispers spreading like wildfire. The quiet authority of Emma Calder, once dismissed as a nobody, had begun to unsettle Colonel Barrett and ripple through every corner of the base. Emma stood in the center of the lot, clipboard in hand, reviewing vehicle logs and GPS discrepancies. Her movements were precise, calm, and deliberate, a stark contrast to Barrett's increasing agitation. Every soldier watching her realized something profound. She was no ordinary officer. Barrett stormed across the lot, face flushed with anger. "Emma Calder, step away from those vehicles. You have no authority here." Emma turned to him, her expression composed. "Colonel Barrett, I am fully authorized. Every inspection, every audit, every observation is sanctioned. You are obstructing a federal investigation. Step aside." The words were calm, measured, and final. Soldiers froze, their eyes darting between Barrett and Emma. For the first time, Barrett felt the weight of authority he could not command. His voice faltered. "You who gave you." Emma calmly produced her credentials, slowly revealing the insignia of a full-bird colonel. Her rank and clearance had been hidden beneath the guise of a transfer officer. Soldiers gasped audibly. Barrett's mouth opened, then closed. Silence fell across the motor pool. You ka," Barrett stammered, disbelief etched into every line of his face. You're a..." Emma's eyes met his, unwavering. A full colonel with clearance to investigate internal logistics and security threats. My presence here is not a suggestion. It is an order. Step aside, Colonel, or your obstruction will be formally documented. The soldiers watched, captivated and stunned. The woman they had once ignored as a quiet, unassuming newcomer had just silenced the colonel with the revelation of her rank. Barrett's usual dominance crumbled, replaced by a mixture of fury, fear, and disbelief. SGT. Mason Grant stepped closer to Emma, standing silently as a visible sign of support. He had spent years under Barrett's command, yet he had never seen the colonel reduced to helplessness. "Ma'am, it's incredible," he murmured. Emma ignored him, focusing on the task at hand. "We continue. Every vehicle, every log, every irregularity. The evidence must be complete before anyone leaves this motor pool." Barrett's fists clenched, but he knew arguing further would accomplish nothing. Soldiers whispered among themselves, some nodding in silent agreement with Emma's authority. The standoff had shifted the balance of power irreversibly. Emma's gaze moved to the east side of the motor pool, where one truck had been flagged for tampering. She approached carefully, kneeling to inspect the hidden transmitter beneath the chassis. Her gloved fingers traced the wires, confirming her earlier suspicions. Someone had deliberately tampered with the vehicle to track movements and cover unauthorized operations. Grant's eyes widened. "Ma'am, this is dangerous. Whoever did this, they're bold." Emma nodded. "Yes, and they are still active. That's why our documentation must be meticulous. We cannot afford mistakes." Barrett, still reeling from the revelation of her rank, tried one last attempt to assert control. "You cannot do this. This motor pool is under my command. You." Emma raised her hand, stopping him mid-sentence. "Colonel, your command is procedural. My authority is legal, sanctioned, and active. This investigation is now under my control. Step aside." The tension was palpable. Soldiers held their breath, the air thick with anticipation. Barrett's usual bluster was gone, replaced by simmering anger. He looked around the lot, realizing that the soldiers' loyalty was no longer guaranteed. They now recognized Emma's authority as legitimate, commanding, and undeniable. Emma rose to her full height, her gaze sweeping across the fleet. "Attention, everyone. From this moment, all inspections, audits, and operations fall under my command. Any interference will be documented and reported. The priority is safety and integrity." The soldiers stood in stunned silence, some nodding quietly, others whispering to one another. Barrett, humiliated and furious, finally stepped back, his authority effectively nullified. For the first time in decades, he experienced the vulnerability of being powerless in a place he had long ruled. Emma didn't pause. She moved swiftly from vehicle to vehicle, inspecting, documenting, and directing the soldiers with calm precision. Her presence had transformed the motor pool, instilling both discipline and awe. She uncovered tampered wiring, falsified logs, and unauthorized trips that had been meticulously hidden for months. Every discovery reinforced the scope of the corruption and danger lurking beneath the surface. Grant worked silently beside her, his respect and loyalty evident. "Ma'am, it's extraordinary. You've turned the entire motor pool upside down, and nobody can challenge you now." Emma nodded, eyes scanning the lot. "We've only just begun. The deeper threat remains. Someone at higher command orchestrated these operations. Barrett is a symptom, not the cause." The sun climbed higher, casting sharp shadows across the asphalt. Emma paused at a truck that had been flagged for serious tampering. The GPS transmitter and fuel log irregularities pointed to unauthorized off-base operations. She documented every detail, knowing this would be crucial evidence for the larger investigation. Barrett, standing to the side, seethed but dared not approach. The soldiers' whispers grew louder, now focused on Emma's calm authority rather than the colonel's bluster. "SGT." Grant leaned closer, whispering, Ma'am, they've never seen anyone like you. They're realizing it now. Emma's gaze met his, unwavering. Good. They must understand the truth before the threat escalates further. We continue carefully but decisively. Every vehicle, every log, every signature must be accounted for. As she moved to the last section of the motor pool, a soldier shouted from across the lot, "Ma'am, you need to see this." Emma approached quickly. Hidden beneath a truck, they discovered a transmitter linked to an off-base location, the very coordinates that had been connected to her missing brother. Her pulse quickened, but her expression remained calm. The discovery confirmed her suspicions. The network operating within the motor pool was more dangerous and far-reaching than she had imagined. Barrett's face turned ashen. He had witnessed the discovery, the soldiers' growing respect for Emma, and the undeniable authority she now wielded. For the first time, he understood he was no longer in control. Emma addressed the gathered soldiers and staff, her voice steady but commanding. "This concludes the preliminary audit. All tampered vehicles have been identified. Documentation is complete. The investigation will continue beyond this motor pool to uncover the full network behind these operations." The soldiers stood in silent awe, some nodding in quiet approval, others whispering about the revelation of her true rank. Barrett, humiliated and silenced, could only watch as the woman he had dismissed as a nobody had transformed the power dynamics of the motor pool entirely. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the asphalt, Emma paused at the center of the lot. She turned to Grant, her expression resolute. "Tomorrow, we follow the trail. Every discovery leads to the source. The network responsible for these operations will be exposed, and my brother's fate, along with the safety of every soldier, depends on what we do next." Grant nodded, understanding the gravity of the moment. "Ma'am, whatever comes next, I'm with you." Emma glanced at the soldiers around her, their whispers fading into a respectful silence. The stage was set. The confrontation with higher-level corruption, with threats far beyond Barrett, was imminent. The quiet nobody had become the authority nobody could ignore, and Fort Bragg's motor pool would never be the same. The true battle had only just begun. The pre-dawn chill settled over Fort Bragg's motor pool, blanketing the asphalt in a misty silence. Soldiers arrived cautiously, whispering among themselves, aware that today would not be like any other. The rumor of Emma Calder's authority, once dismissed as a nobody, had spread, stirring awe, skepticism, and fear in equal measure. Even Colonel Barrett, usually a storm of bluster, now walked with caution, uncertain of how to navigate the woman who had dismantled his control. Emma stood at the center of the motor pool, her clipboard in hand, scanning the rows of vehicles with precision. Every engine, every tire, every panel had been documented, every irregularity noted, every tampering logged. Today, she would follow the final trail, the off-base coordinates that promised answers to months of hidden corruption and the truth about her missing brother. SGT, Mason Grant approached quietly, his eyes scanning the perimeter. "Ma'am, the soldiers are ready, but Barrett, he's fuming." Emma's gaze didn't waver. "Let him fume. Authority comes from law, not ego. Today, we expose the network and reclaim safety for every soldier here." The motor pool gates opened, and a convoy of vehicles moved out under Emma's direct supervision. Barrett barked orders, attempting to assert control, but his voice carried no weight. Soldiers now followed Emma's every instruction, their trust and respect for her absolute. As the convoy reached the outskirts of the base, Emma signaled for a halt. The coordinates led them to an abandoned warehouse, a structure long forgotten by the casual observer but strategically positioned near the outskirts of military jurisdiction. Inside, the air was heavy with the smell of oil, gasoline, and dust. Grant's eyes widened. "Ma'am, this place, it's huge. How many vehicles are in there?" Emma didn't respond immediately. Her eyes scanned the dim interior, counting off the rows of trucks, jeeps, and Humvees. Many bore subtle modifications, tampered ignition systems, hidden GPS trackers, falsified logs, exactly as she had suspected. The scale of the operation was staggering. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows. Armed men, dressed in dark tactical gear, moved with precision, blocking the exits. The air grew tense, every soldier in the convoy alert, weapons raised. Emma stepped forward, her voice calm but commanding. "Stop! This operation is illegal. Any interference will be documented and prosecuted. Step aside." The lead figure laughed, a low, cold sound that reverberated through the warehouse. "And who's going to stop us? You." Emma reached into her jacket, producing her badge and insignia, now fully visible. Her voice carried authority, unshakable and absolute. "Yes, I am Colonel Emma Calder, federally cleared to investigate internal military corruption. Your operations are compromised and your actions are criminal. Step aside or be detained." The soldiers froze. Barrett's eyes widened in disbelief. He had spent years wielding authority through fear, but now he watched as a single woman, previously dismissed as a nobody, silenced him with the revelation of her true rank. Even the armed men hesitated, uncertain if her words were bluff or law. Emma continued, stepping forward with measured confidence. "Every vehicle, every piece of equipment, every falsified log documented, every off-base operation traced and recorded. You cannot hide from the law, from accountability, or from justice." One of the armed men reached for a weapon. In a flash, Emma signaled to her team. Soldiers moved with precision, surrounding the intruders. The tension exploded into action, not chaos, but controlled, strategic movement. Within moments, every armed figure was secured. Barrett, standing frozen, finally understood the true power of her presence. Emma turned to the soldiers. "Search every vehicle, verify every log, document everything. No stone left unturned, and find my brother." The search was meticulous, tense, and slow. Each vehicle revealed layers of deceit: falsified GPS data, hidden compartments, tampered fuel logs, and mechanical modifications meant to evade detection. But then, in the rear of the warehouse, Grant discovered a small office with reinforced doors. Inside, they found specialist David Calder, Emma's missing brother, alive but restrained, weak but unharmed. Emma rushed forward, relief and fury mingling in her expression. "David." Her brother's eyes filled with tears. "Emma, you found me." "Of course I did," she said, her voice steady but fierce. "You're safe now, and we're going to stop everyone responsible for this, starting with the network that put you here." Barrett, finally regaining a semblance of voice, stepped forward. "Colonel Calder, this is unprecedented. You've dismantled my motor pool, exposed the operations, and saved your brother all at once." Emma looked at him, calm and unyielding. "Yes, authority is not determined by who shouts the loudest, Colonel. It is determined by law, by competence, and by dedication to truth. Today, your arrogance was silenced by accountability." The soldiers murmured in agreement. The motor pool, once a place of strict hierarchy and rigid command, had been transformed. A quiet nobody had become the embodiment of law, order, and integrity. Emma turned to her team. "Secure the warehouse. Collect all evidence. Every vehicle, every log, every recording will be cataloged. Barrett, you will be questioned for negligence and obstruction of duty." Barrett's face paled. For decades, he had ruled through fear and authority, believing rank alone could command respect. Now he was powerless, a witness to the undeniable truth. Emma Calder's true rank, her competence, and her unyielding integrity had silenced him completely. Grant approached, his voice hushed but full of admiration. "Ma'am, I don't think anyone in the motor pool will ever forget this. You've changed everything." Emma nodded, her eyes on her brother as he was freed from his restraints. "We've only just begun. The investigation continues, but today, we restore safety, accountability, and justice. Nothing and no one can undo this moment." As the sun rose higher, spilling light across the asphalt and illuminating the rows of vehicles. Emma Calder stood at the center of the motor pool, her presence commanding, her authority undeniable. Soldiers watched in awe, Barrett remained silenced, and the hidden network of corruption had been exposed. For the first time in the motor pool's history, a single officer, once dismissed as a nobody, had demonstrated that true authority is earned, not assumed. And somewhere beyond the base, those who had orchestrated the illegal operations realized too late that their carefully hidden scheme had been unraveled by one determined, relentless, and unwavering colonel. The motor pool would never be the same. Emma Calder's name and her true rank would echo as a warning, a lesson, and a story of justice, courage, and authority that silenced even the most arrogant and untouchable figures.